Hello and welcome to News Express, exclusively brought to you by Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. I am Chukwunonso Modi. Now let's take a look at the stories hitting the front page this week. So we have Ahmed, Treasury Tzar goes for broke with dust-raising drink tax. Sub-headlines, Nigeria's revenue-chasing finance minister tests waters ahead of fuel subsidy battle. Says cabineted tax for revenue reduce sugar-induced health crisis. Nigerians weigh economic health implications. Now another headline is after Nembe disaster, buyer beware all over asset sale as Shell appeals 800 billion naira judgment. Sub-headlines, 800 billion naira judgment debt appeal on January 25. Experts say due diligence required on assets necessary to avoid Nembe repeat, and Shell Nigeria, UK, Netherlands liable. Now, you don't want to miss technology and innovation with technology trade for 2022. Then there's traveling and hospitality with Qatar wants Airbus refund. On the commodities and agriculture, agri-tech sector offers opportunities. Then executive knowledge series, the power of collective intelligence. Under the Monday interview, securities markets face blockchain disruptions. Now let's bring in Philip Isakba, the publisher Business AM, to help us make sense of the headlines. Good morning, Philip.
Yeah, good morning. Good to be back. How are you?
I'm fine. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to all our listeners.
Yes. I hope you enjoyed your holiday.
I did, and I hope you did too.
I did, definitely. Okay, so let's go into the stories for today. Now, the big one. Ahmed, Treasury Tzar goes for broke with dust-raising drink tax. Now, it's not a secret that Nigeria is chasing revenue as the Treasury does not have plenty of cash to provide for the country's needs. I mean, we have been seeing the country is already highly geared on borrowing, both domestic and foreign. Now, in an attempt to expand this tax net, last year we saw the Finance Act had been designed to enable our finance minister rake in more revenues. And in fact, the big one was the fuel subsidy, with Nigerians crying on how that would really affect the economy. And now the finance minister has announced a 10 naira per litre tax on carbonated drinks, which experts have called a testing ground and likening it to a warrior testing the grounds of the battlefield before the war. Now, Philip, what is the implication of this move for the economy? I mean, most importantly, the drinks industry and even the consumer. What will be the ripple effect of this tax?
Global and domestic economic crises have contributed to all of this.
Yeah.
We can also add some kind of bad management, you would say, to this as well. But the key thing is that you have something that has come. The manufacturing sector in Nigeria has been suffering for quite some time. And one of the things that they don't want to hear is what you call excise duties, excise tax, because this drink tax is an excise tax, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
So now what will it do? I mean, it's going to affect. Government wants to actually get in more revenues,
okay.
And they look at everywhere they can do this, and then they have looked at carbonated drinks, the sugar-laced, most of them sugar-laced drinks, and they say, okay, if you have the statistics of what some of the soft drinks companies do in terms of sales in Nigeria, you can see that government is attracted by the numbers that they have seen, and they say this is an easy way, to zoom in and then soak in some revenues, But that's going to have a ripple effect in terms of the manufacturing sector. The manufacturers of those drinks are going to have to sit down. I'm sure a lot of the board meetings and management meetings will be looking at how do we handle this. 10 naira per litre on sweetened drinks. How do we handle this? Do we pass it on straight away to consumers, or do we cut back? So first of all, there's an impact on. It's going to be an impact on manufacturing sector. The manufacturers of these drinks, and then you're going to have another impact on what's it called, the consumers. Who have to cough out some more, to be able to afford this drink, because definitely you expect manufacturers to pass it on. They're not going to keep it and say soak it in themselves. They're going to pass it on. And so you're going to have sales drop drastically, for those drinks, because if consumers think that they cannot afford it, or they don't want to afford pay higher for those drinks, definitely some people will withdraw. They will stop having those drinks, and then you then have the impact will be felt by the manufacturers, in terms of revenues, reduce revenues, reduce profits. That's going to bounce off on those that are quoted on the stock exchange in terms of what you call dividend payment, because dividends always come from what's it called, the profits that are made. So that's then the whole idea of being able to get revenue by government. Of course, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria has already raised an alarm. That's why we say it's a dust raising tax, for instance, because manufacturers are already complaining. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they have to deal with. You still have the for importing raw materials still jammed up. Access to the ports, not there. Electricity is a big problem for manufacturers, and so you have another burden that they have to deal with. So that's going to have an impact. And they are also already saying that, well, the revenues that you are thinking that you get from this might not actually happen, because manufacturers are going to respond, if they pass it on to consumers, and consumers do not buy as much as you thought they will buy, and then you won't get the revenues, And the other thing is also that for instance, government say, we want to get revenue, but we also want to cut down sugar intake. So they say, it's a tax that is actually aimed at two things. One is to ramp up revenue for the government. The other one is also to begin to check our health situation. But we have been on this for a very long time. Government came into office in 2015. This thing come up until now, when you're looking for revenues, and so there's going to be the effect, broad ranging effect. The people manufacturing, the manufacturing sector, the economy as a whole, in terms of that sector contributing to GDP, and then you're going to have the effect on consumers, who are going to really slow down in terms of. But also, maybe perhaps a positive side to it is that consumers are going to actually begin to look at, well, this sugar thing that they're talking about, it does make sense. Let's begin to check the sugar we consume, So maybe that's one positive side of it, But if you look elsewhere, they have. It's not usually not revenue driven when government says it wants to impose tax, to be able to cut down on, for instance, the tobacco smoking, when they put tax on tobacco, it's not because of revenue, when they put tax on sugar, for instance, on sugar related product, it's not usually done what's it called, to control the health crisis that they have, but this time, basically, it's just a revenue-driven policy, that has come in. But the key thing is that we're saying that the Treasury Tzar is already. Ahmed is using it to test the waters, because recall that in February the plan is to remove subsidies from fuel, and that's a big battle right ahead, and that battle is going to be wide-ranging, because you have to deal with labor, you have to deal with different sectors of the economy, you have to deal with consumers, you have to, perhaps this has just been thrown in, One is to take in revenue, soaking revenue, but the other thing is to say, do something first, to see how they will respond, we are expecting some response to come from some sectors of the economy, particularly the manufacturers who are in that particular area. We understand that there's some mobilization going on, in terms of how to respond. The dust isn't settling yet. You're going to have a lot of people talking. The manufacturers are up in arms. Consumers will just only vote with their feet, by withdrawing. And so this is a huge thing that has been put on the table, But this is ahead of the removal of petroleum subsidy, where the speculation is that we're going to have fuel move from 165 naira per liter to some 340 to perhaps maybe later on, if you allow it to just free float, then you're going to rise up to 540 naira per liter. We don't know, but that is the big elephant in the room that government has to deal with. We want to see how much of political will, this penchant or this pursuit of revenue, when that comes into effect, or when they do have the political will to go after subsidy, by withdrawing from providing more subsidy. That is the big one that is coming up, and they've scheduled it for February. You will have expected that it will have taken off straight away from the beginning of the year,
yes.
But that didn't come up. So the minds of people that this is the way government is going to approach the situation. We had a finance bill last year, going into last year, there was a finance bill for 2021.
Yes.
That is from 2020, they started pushing that finance bill, and then it was passed for 2021. The government made some money from VAT and the rest of it, and some corporate tax that they got, and then we come to almost to the end of 2021, they come up with another bill, a review of the bill that came up, almost like we are going to be having bills come up every year. The finance bill is going to be reviewed every year in terms of wanting to, all in the effort of getting revenues into the Treasury. And that is what we are seeing taking place at the moment.
With all you've said, it's obvious that the effect of this particular bill won't be negative, because as much as we are saying consumers will try to curtail sugar and see how it's best if I pump down on my sugar, but the economy is going to be really tough on the manufacturing industry. And as much as they've justified their reasons, the big question here is, if you put this excise duty on these carbonated drinks and you get the money, are they actually going to use it on the economy? Are we going to see the results, or it's just going to be an issue of we get this money and we're not seeing it?
That has always been the what's it called? What you may call the disagreement between the public and the people and the government, because when you demand for them to pay more, whether in form of a normal general tax or taxes on different items, they feel that they do not see the impact of the taxes that they pay.
Yes.
So that is what has always been, because a tax like this excise tax that we've just seen, this 10 naira per liter, on carbonated drink that we have just seen, could have come from the point of view of a health concern, that is when there's there's trust between the people, the people and the government, that when they pay something extra, into the coffers of government, that the money that they pay will be utilized, in areas that they can all feel and they can see and feel, but because there's no trust. There's always this trust issue between the people and the government, so there's no belief in whatever they come up with, because ordinarily, if there was no trust issues, that government is going to spend the money that we pay extra on these things, it would just have been very easy to sell to the people, because there's a health concern, so you could have crises, different crises that we have come to see, so it will have just been a no-brainer, for government to sell this to the people. But because the people don't trust government with the extra monies that they pay, they tend to disagree or oppose this kind of taxes. So government talks about revenue. It's good. The purse is empty or the purse is near empty. So it wants more money. It brings up a health concern. But it hasn't been concerned about the health of the people. Anyway, if you look at if someone said you spend more money on the national renovating the National Assembly and cut down money on health and education, and you say you are doing some budgeting. That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. But I mean, that's Nigeria for you. Now, with all this happening, the government obviously wants to boost the revenue. What are other solutions? I mean, if this isn't working, there must be something else. Somewhere else they can make this money to, pay our debt and also take care of the economy. So what other path should they...
one thing that has always come up, is that the democracy that is practiced currently is very, very expensive.
Yes.
It is too expensive. It is. There's a lot of costs. Recall that there was a committee or commission that was set up by the last government, the Orange Saye report. On the size of government and this and recommended some weeding of some weeding and merging of some MDAs.
Okay.
That has been on for years. The last government did not implement that report. You expected that some action will be taken for a government that is perhaps suffering seriously from lack of revenue, because government is, the truth is that it is over bloated. The expensive nature of government makes it such that the revenues are usually consumption revenues. It's consumptive activities that you spend revenues on. Capital projects or capital expenditure not right for the size of the economy, not right for the size of the country. Every year that these budgets or spendings are released. So that cuts down the size of government. Government is too large, and if you. There could be a lot of savings to be made from cutting down government for government to go lean. At federal, at states, at different levels, of government. That should be done. So that would be one other side, and then the other one would be to really have an open economy. And then free the people. You have tech. You have technology, the area of technology that you need to really give some freedom, to the Nigerians, to Nigerians to exercise. There's a lot to be gained from that. We hear of a lot of things happening outside the country, and we hear a lot of tech-related activities taking place in the country. Why don't you create an atmosphere, create an environment, that frees the people, to really function, to really exploit that area.
Yeah.
Then you also have solid minerals that has not, you have solid minerals across different parts of the country, that have not been exploited they've not even been scratched, not to talk of being fully exploited, So that sector needs to be organized seriously in terms of the way they look at crude oil as a great resource for revenues. They need to look at how to organize the solid mineral sector to be able to get revenues. And then you have different agriculture hasn't been done. There's quite a lot to look at, for government to be able to get the revenue that it needs, because government spend largely on crude oil, and in crude oil you do practically nothing. People bring in the technology, they get the oil from the ground, and then you wait to collect royalties and collect all the taxes, and then that's all. But what can be done, they should look at the solid mirror. There's gold. Well, I was looking at tin. We are looking at commodities over the weekend. Commodities, tin. Do you know tin is selling at $40,000? I think a metric ton.
Wow.
We're selling at $40,000 a metric ton. Last week at the weekend. And they used to, and I was asking, I thought we used to produce tin in some Jos. Remember that they used to talk about the tin city, Jos being the tin city.
Yes.
What happened to all of that? If you were to really look deep into it, people probably are mining tin, and shipping those tin out of the country illegally, and you wonder, because oil came and everything was forgotten. So what happened to the tin city called the Plateau tin, the tin city? That was what it was known for, And tin is selling at what's it called? And then you have iron ore,
There's
so many things.
So many.
So there's a lot that they are not paying attention to, and they are not really creating the right environment, creating the right policies, for investors to come in and then to exploit what is available, for revenues to be generated.
Yes. Like they say, new year, new beginnings. Hopefully this year they would start looking at these other sectors and stop focusing on just oil itself.
It's a year of politics. Remember?
Yes, true. Very true.
They really don't have time.
Well, let's see how that goes. Now, quickly, let's go to the second headline that says, after Nembe disaster, buyer beware all over asset sale as Shell appeals 800 billion naira judgment. Now, many have said that Shell will leave its Nigerian onshore assets, especially in the wake of the devastating environmental consequences for its host communities. And this has brought out protests and, of course, agitations. But it turns out that the British multinational wants to go far away into deeper Nigerian waters, where it will have little or no interaction with host communities, and so it has put up for sale all those assets. Now, does this come as a surprise to you, Philip?
Well, not surprising, because if you look at the global play with regards to oil exploration, you find that there's a pullback, by major international oil companies.
Yes.
So they are redefining their operations. Total is now Total Energies.
Yes.
And I think British Petroleum, has for a long time been crusading on that. What's it called? Not getting out completely, but redefining its operation with regards to fossil fuel exploration. And then you have recall that at the COP26 meeting last year, there was a decision by financial institutions to pull back funding. How they get involved in financing fossil fuel exploration. But long before that, you recall that the restiveness in the Niger Delta in oil producing areas, have always given concern to the international oil companies. And it seems like it was becoming a really big challenge to them.
Yes.
And then Shell, that has been on the ground for more than since even before 1956, when crude oil was discovered in commercial quantity, it has deep water activities, so that it I think it's a PSA production sharing contract arrangement of the PS, that arrangement that is on, which it's a big Bunga oil exploration field, So now it's trying to move away from these assets that have become problematic. Even though they are still producing, they want to concentrate on the deep offshore, you
Yes.
know, where they don't have communities coming up. If you want to go deep offshore to go and cause trouble, you know how much the type of boat that you need to get to, and the number of people that you need to take to those places to be able to cause any trouble. So they are pulling back on that, you know. So but this pullback, you know, it's the buyer beware sign. You know, over the weekend they came up to say that there's progress going on, you know, with regards to the asset sales that they want to embark upon, you know. But recall that you have the Itheo Nembe disaster that happened that lasted for 32 days, you know, and that was a shell facility that was sold to indigenous Itheo, you know, and so the buyer beware is about whether those assets, you know, I mean, in November we spoke to, I think November or September, about thereabout November, we spoke to one of the global analysts of the sector, you know, Wood Mackenzie, who told us that, buyers have to do their own due diligence, even though Shell is looking for 3 billion naira from those assets, or the assets have been valued at 3 billion naira. They talk about doing their own due diligence. So the buyers beware is that, Nembe disaster happened, you know, you never can tell where else a disaster could happen with regards to those assets. So the assets, they are saying, it's not just about the oil that you have inside, you know, the fact that they are producing fields, but also the facilities that are there, you know, because when it does happen again, you know, Shell will have sold, and the new owners will be in charge of it.
Yes.
But that, apart from that too, is that recall that we spoke about some time ago about the biggest award, you know, the judgment award, you know,
the 800
against
billion
Shell,
naira.
the 800 billion naira. That's 1.5 billion dollars, and it's not just Shell Nigeria, but this is something that also extends to Shell UK and Shell. The judgment covers Shell UK and Shell Netherlands. You know,
yes.
so this is huge when this does really become an interesting thing in the global market. This is something that could come down on the shares of Shell in international what's called capital markets, you know, because 1.5 billion isn't small money. It might be small in terms of the size of Shell globally, you know, but it is significant, you know. So
it is.
The point is being made about that this is really something that people, indigenous companies looking to buy these assets need to be aware about, and do their due diligence seriously.
But Shell is appealing, from what I hear. They already approached the Court of Appeal in Owerri to...
Yes. That is coming up on January 25th. You know, they are asking for a stay of execution, you know, of that judgment, you know, but the point is the judgment is on ground that is 800 billion. But we will wait to see how the appeal will go.
Okay, we'll wait to see. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Philip. Let's see how the stories develop this week.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that was Philip Isakpa, the publisher, Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. That's all for now. Stay tuned for more.